Hi, this is Todd-o-phonic Todd. I'm here with Suzi Quatro, star of the new documentary Suzi Q, released by the Acme Film Company, directed by Liam Firminger. You can find information on www.suziq, that's SUZI movie.com. It premieres online in the USA and Canada on July 1st and on digital and DVD July 3rd. Now, Suzi, your early musical history was based on two cataclysmic televised events. Seeing Elvis on Ed Sullivan in 1956 made you want to be a performer at the tender age of 5.5, and seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan 8 years later influenced you and your sister Patty to form a band with some neighborhood girls.
That's correct. It's crazy, isn't it? Both the same television show, too. Isn't that nuts, so? Yeah, because when I saw Elvis, like you said, I was really young, and my older sister was screaming because she was 9 years old, and I actually thought, why are you screaming? And then I went into the screen. I got drawn into the screen, and I had that light bulb moment. At that tender age, I'm going to do that. Is that crazy?
Yeah, and it's also funny. You mentioned the same show. It's also weird because, Ed Sullivan himself seemed like such a square, but yet here he was, changing the world in the way that he did.
I don't know if you watched it, but that was like essential viewing for most families on the Sunday. And he always would say at the end of the show, and now something for the youngsters. And then he would bring on something like that, So, he really was groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Pleasure Seekers recorded their first 45 for Dave Leone's Hideout label, and Dave also ran the popular local club, I believe in Grosse Pointe, of the same name.
Yes.
It was. I always saw rumors that you used to work there. Was that true?
No, I don't know where that came from. I think Patty might have said it one time, but I don't know where the hell she got that from. I used to go there. That was my teenage hangout. And after we had seen the Beatles, and we all immediately got on the phone with two other sisters lived down the road, and the girl who lived 4 doors down, and her dad, funny enough, Diane Baker, her dad was in my dad's band. It's so strange, the synergy of the world. And the other two were Nan Ball and Mary Lou Ball. And we were all talking, and we decided after seeing the Beatles, 64 this was, that we would form a band, and that's what we did. And then we were at the Hideout, dancing, because I used to go there to dance all the time. It was like, the thing that you did. And my sister said to the owner that the band was crap, which is quite funny. Mm-hmm. And he said, she said, we can do better. So all of a sudden we had a booking, and we weren't even ready yet. So we had to learn 3 songs. We learned 3 songs, same 3 chords.
And that first, now you grew up in a relatively strict Catholic household, yet What a Way to Die, the first Pleasure Seekers 45, is essentially an ode to alcohol poisoning. What did your parents think of that?
Yeah. My family didn't drink at all. They didn't drink or smoke, but it was, I think Dave Leone wrote that. And of course, anything in those very early days, I was only 14 when I started the band, so I was very young. I've now 56 years in the business. I've never stopped. Anything ballsy or a little bit near the knuckle or whatever, it was always given to me to sing. Always. Yep. I did the majority. I mean, in the Pleasure Seekers, I was the 99.9% front singer and front person. So, but I always got all the rough songs. I guess they thought I could carry it off.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, that record, I imagine you sold a few copies at gigs and at local stores, but there weren't a lot pressed or sold in the mid-'60s. But then in the mid-'80s, it came out on a garage compilation and kind of achieved legendary status. And now, all these years later, it's a very well-known song.
I know, isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? I know some people here, because I've been based in the UK for a long time, and there's one of the disc jockeys here. He prides himself on old records, old unusual records. And this is his favorite record. It's crazy. Yeah. What a way to die.
It's
Who
amazing.
Would have thought it? Who would have thought that? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, eventually the Pleasure Seekers released a second 45 with Mercury Records, but that was your discography for the time. And for a band who released a total of 2 45s, you got a lot of work. Part of that could probably be attributed to your brother Mickey, better known as Mike, promoting festivals and club shows. But do you think part of it was also due to being an all-girl band?
Well, that's not entirely correct. We worked constant, which obviously is to do with being a unique all-girl band, because that would bring the people in, oh, look, an all-girl band, blah, blah, blah. But I got to say at this juncture, too, that I didn't give a damn if it was girls or not girls. It wasn't my thing. I just wanted to be in a band. It just ended up that way, but it wasn't my focus at all, because I don't really do gender. But my brother didn't really start to book us until the Pleasure Seekers disbanded, and it turned into Cradle. And then my little sister was born into singing. That was only about 18 months I was in that band before I got, taken over to England. He started the festival business, and he did very well. And the Pleasure Seekers came back and played one of his festivals, as it says in the documentary, and we kind of died a death, because we were a show business, a show band on that kind of nightclubby-ish circuit. And we came back and did this festival, and oh my God almighty, what the hell happened to the music business? It was really, quite a shock to us. We were out there working and real professional, and we came back to that, and that is not what was happening for the younger people. We were stuck in almost like a false security in that nightclubby type thing, But whatever it was great learning experience for me. Absolutely great. I wouldn't change a minute of it. 5 sets a night,
Yeah.
Talk about learning your craft. Yeah, learn your craft. And then Cradle was which my brother helped with, and it was only, like I say, about 18 months worth. And Elektra Records came to see the band Cradle. I was more, for the first time ever, a little bit in the background, because my little sister came in and wanted to, and we were going to have her sing more in the modern style of the sort of Led Zeppelin type kind of thing like that, and that's what she did. So I kind of took a little bit of a back seat, and I became really seriously good on my bass, which was a godsend in a way, because I was the fun person, bass player, singer. Then I just became the bass player, and I only did maybe 5 or 6 songs a night. Elektra Records saw that band, and they offered me a solo contract, even though I was at the back. And Mickey Most came to England in the exact same week with Jeff Beck to record at Motown. My brother got him to come see the band. He also, in the back I came up and did 2 songs, and he also offered me a solo contract. So, as you can see in the big scheme of things, this is my path that I had to follow. That doesn't happen twice in 1 week,
No. And so Mickey Most comes out to Detroit to record Jeff Beck, and sees you, and he actually is not interested in the band, but
not at all. Actually, he didn't like the band at all. Yeah,
right. In you as a solo performer, it turns out, and your family. I think he spoke to Mike about that, and your family actually tried keeping that from you for a while, and it seemed to started a trend where rather than embrace your success, oftentimes your family was seemingly resentful of it. Correct?
Yeah, it's all in the documentary. I mean, they were able to speak for themselves. I didn't change anything. I wasn't there for the interviews, so they actually said what they wanted to say. And I gave them the freedom to have that platform. But I don't think you're ever going to. It's difficult with any family. In the same business, and one of them gets plucked out and makes it. So you're going to get this. I understand that on one level, but the other level that I never understand, and I never will, is why I don't get the validation from them, the applause, for want of a better word. But, and all of us, I don't care who you are, and if you don't admit it, you're lying. We all want validation from our family.
Of course.
It's just so important, and They would give it to my brother and say how wonderful, what a player, and this and that, and cry when he plays, but nobody wants to applaud me, and I think that's wrong. And it says so in the documentary. I say it nicely. I don't say it nasty, but it's there for. I don't have to say anything. It's there for everybody to see that watches the film. I don't really have to even comment. I don't have to comment because it's just there.
Right, and once again, the film.
And when you see, when you see it on the big screen, there's actually no disguising anything. It's blown up big, and you kind of go, oh, So it is hard. Sure, it is, and you see it in my face during the film. I'm real vulnerable and I'm very wide open in this film. So I don't pretend it's easy, but I'm doing the best I can with it all.
Right. The film, once again, is Suzi Q, and I'm talking with the star, Suzi Quatro. Now, when you first went over to the UK, things weren't that great for you. The living conditions were less than ideal, and Mickey was also having a hard time coming up with the right material. And it took a lot of determination on your part to stay the course, because that was not an easy time period for you.
It wasn't. Oh, my God, it wasn't. And I'm just going to digress real quickly.
Sure.
Funny that you say that word determination because, and then we'll come back to your question. I've been doing, because I'm now doing a movie of my life due to the big success of this documentary. I'm now doing a movie. And I've started a word cloud. You know what those are? I've asked everybody I know, famous, not famous, friends, this, that, to tell me 3 words to describe me, and it goes into a word cloud, right? And then the one most said word gets to be the biggest in the middle, and then it goes out, the second most, the third most, and it's a big cloud, lots and lots of words. So the number 1 word, are you ready? Determined. And I can't deny that. Yes, it was my path. I took my shot. I could have failed. Who knows what's going to happen, but I was determined to come here and make my name and go back famous, and that's what I did.
Right. And yes, certainly tremendous success indeed. And one of the perhaps one of the early routes to that success was you went out on tour supporting Slade and Thin Lizzy. Do you think that was an important experience for you?
This was just before I had my own hits. Mm-hmm. Mickey signed me as a singer, songwriter, musician. We were in there recording, but because I didn't have a band, I was floundering, and Mickey was floundering. We couldn't find it. I'm a band girl. That's what I do, right? And finally, I said to him, Mickey, we're not getting anywhere. I was writing all my own stuff, but we're not getting anywhere. I need a band, and he said, okay, put one together, which I did. Then everything started to look up. Everything took shape. Mickey was good friends with Chaz Chandler, who was the manager of Slade. He used to be in the Animals, the bass player. And he said, do me a favor. Suzi's got a band together, and she's going to be very big, and can you put her on the tour? So I just had 20 minutes at the opening of the Thin Lizzy and Slade, And we were doing all original material, all my own songs. And, of course, that tour got the band very together naturally. We're doing a nationwide tour. And then Mickey had signed Nicky Chin and Mike Chapman, and he said to me, we need that 3-minute single, which is what Mike Chapman was particularly talented at. And he said, come in, and we came in, we went downstairs, we did the set, all original. Mike heard it. It was all a lot of like Can the Can. I was writing that kind of stuff. And Mike said, okay. And he went that night and wrote Can the Can. So we found a system that worked for us. He saw what I was doing. He saw what I was all about. He saw what kind of performer I was. He saw the avenue that I moved in. There are times when I can't remember who wrote what song, to tell you the truth.
Right.
So we really did work in tandem, and it took that pressure off me to write as, this is a single. I didn't want that. I've written most of the albums myself all the way through my career, all the B-sides, all the albums, and I've had some single releases. I mean, now I do everything myself, with myself or with my son. Yeah, that's completely changed. But back then it was a good system. They wrote particularly for me. I didn't get a song that was written for anybody else. We would work out, okay, we're working on the next album. Okay, I'm writing, and they're coming up with that little 3-minute single.
Yeah, they had an incredible knack. I mean, you had a relatively short period where you were trying to find the right material, but both the Sweet and Mud had been lurking around for a good amount of time with minimal success, and they hooked up with Chin and Chapman, and all of a sudden they're on the top of the charts too. Yeah,
they had that. You see, they had that ability to do something with the band and make it their own. They were very good at that. Mickey had the ability to. Mickey was a star spotter. He's very good at that. He could look at, like a group of, like he did with me, look at a group, and he'd see the one that was going to be the one. and he'd find them. And then he was good at framing that artist. He would frame it in the right frame. So that's what Mickey did. He couldn't record me. He couldn't produce me. He didn't know how to produce me. But he was smart enough to get Mike involved, to get Mike producing, you know. He knew that he couldn't do it, so and he thought Mike could, so Mike did. It was great.
Yeah.
And we
and
still work together today, Mike and I.
And it seems like they all gave you a pretty good amount of freedom, too. Am I correct in that?
You know what, Mickey, I have to quote what Mickey always has said about me. Bless him, he's not with us anymore. He died like 17 years ago, so young. Anyway, Mickey always said, nobody tells Susie what to do. You can suggest. So, yes, they gave me freedom. I don't work any other way. I will not be told what to do. I will not be boxed in. I will stay true to myself, and I won't compromise, but I will listen. I do listen. Mickey said, you do listen. I do. Oh. And then I take it in. It's got to be somebody I respect, you know.
Sure. And in addition to the music, you were also largely responsible for creating your own look, which became known as the Suzi Quatro look, of course, with the leather jumpsuit.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yep. Yeah, when the discussion came, you know, Can the Can was recorded, and Mickey said there's going to be a number one. He could hear it. He said it's going to be a number one, and he said, now let's talk about your image. You know, when I went into the office and we sat and talked about it, and he said, what do you want to wear? And I immediately said, leather. And Mickey was kind of against it. He said, no, it's a little bit old-fashioned. You know, it's been done. And I remember saying, well, it hasn't been done by me. And he saw he was not going to win this conversation at all. And he said, okay. He said, okay. Leather, okay. He said, and then he was quiet for a minute. And he said, what about a jumpsuit? And I said, terrific. I thought, my God, how sensible. I had no idea it was going to be sexy. I say this all the time. I was that naive. I said, great. That means I can jump around and everything will stay in place. And Mickey just looked at me like, yeah, Susie, that's why I said that, yeah. So, but you know, that is the magic. I zipped that up, and that really is the magic. It really worked. I still wear it today. So that image has suited me from day one.
Definitely. And Mickey seems like a rather down-to-earth figure in the documentary Suzi Q, but I'm thinking he must have been a bit of a character himself, correct?
Oh, Christ almighty, are you kidding? Yeah. Mickey is, he could be one of the most difficult people you ever met. He could also be one of the most charming. He's a typical Gemini. We're both Geminis. We understand each other. He was very much a father figure to me. He was good to me, but he was tough on me.
Yeah,
he was tough, I have to say. But that's a good thing, because it was character building, you know. But I would do anything for Mickey. He would do anything for me. We had a great relationship at the end of the day. That's what counts.
Now, the follow-up to Can the Can was the incredible 48 Crash. But I think to this day, that's probably the only top 10 song about male menopause.
I love it. I love it when everybody cheers, and then I dedicate it to the guys, and then I tell them afterwards, you know what it's about, don't you? You know? That's very funny.
Yeah. Now, you fell in love and eventually married your guitar player, Len Tuckey, who's featured throughout the documentary. And I'm aware that the dynamic of a band can be difficult when there is a couple involved. Did your relationship with Len cause any stress with the other band members?
It did at the beginning. There was another drummer in the band, and I think he had a bit of a crush, to tell you the truth. And Lenny and I fell in love, you know, and I think he found that quite hard to take. And he left. After recording Can the Can with us, he left 2 weeks before the record came out, so he must have kicked himself forever because it went straight to number one. But you know, it was my band. I was the boss, and when I'm working, relationships do not come into it. So when I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm doing what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if you're my husband, doesn't matter if you're my son, doesn't matter who you are. I'm working, and it worked. We were together for 20 years. We had 2 kids together. We have a granddaughter. And, and now I've been married to my German husband for 27 years. So I've been married my whole life.
Now, Devil Gate Drive was another great smash in many countries, including Australia, where you've always been very popular. but like the first two singles, it didn't create much of a stir in America. At that time, I wanted to be in England so badly because all these great records, yours and others, Slade we already mentioned, were hits there and not here. Bang a Gong and Little Willie made it here out of, that time period, but not very much else. But one thing that's mentioned is because you weren't a hit singles artist in the States, when you did do shows here, you were able to do a different kind of set.
Oh yeah, I had to do a different kind of set because, and also Mickey kept chopping and changing record companies in America, which didn't build the relationship. So you build an artist, so that was a problem. And there was something, I don't know, everybody said it in the film. I think it was a little bit early, and there was something about that whole movement that wasn't quite hit. Now who knows? Who knows? The whole point is that they're all discovering me now, which is great. But it is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. You can't ever guess it, but I did work in America all the time from 1974 on. A lot of fans there, everybody knows who I am, surely, but I just didn't have as many single hits. And when I did my shows in America, I did do more album tracks than the singles. Different shows.
Right.
A totally different show.
And Alice Cooper is featured throughout the new documentary, Suzi Q. You knew him before leaving for England from Detroit, and eventually in 1975, I believe, he had you support his Welcome to My Nightmare tour.
Yes, correct. That was correct. We did. We went over there and did 30 shows by ourselves first, and then we joined the tour where we did a further 80 shows. So Welcome to My Nightmare it was. But we had a good time. We had a good time. It was a lot of people from Detroit on the tour, so it was like Old Homes Week, which is great. Dick Wagner was there, Steve Farmer. It's just, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it.
Yep. And you were on the cover of the first Rolling Stone issue of 1975, and that didn't necessarily lead to your records taking off in America, but it was ultimately responsible for landing you the role of Leather Tuscadero on Happy Days due to the casting agent's daughter having that cover up on her wall.
Yeah, that's correct. They had the script for a while. I learned all this obviously later. They knew that Pinky was going, and they liked that Tuscadero character, so they invented a sister, Leather Tuscadero, which is me, and they wanted somebody possibly who could sing and act, and they weren't sure, but they thought maybe. And they also wanted somebody who was tough but vulnerable, and they just couldn't find what they were looking for. And then she saw that picture on her daughter's wall, and she said, "There she is." Who is she? She said, "That's Suzi Quatro." And they called me up in Japan, and I flew over, and I got the part, and it lasted for 3 seasons, which is great.
Yep.
I am honored to have been in that series. What a great series that was.
And I'm sure my listeners would like to know the answer to the question, what was Donnie Most really like?
Oh, he was great. What a great guy. In fact, one of my favorite episodes that I did was where he asked me out to go to the prom, and I had to dress up in a dress, and be different than who I am, and he had to not tell a joke, and we had a great time on that. We really created a bit of magic on that one, I thought. Really, really good.
Great. And you
liked him a lot.
You were offered the opportunity to continue on in the series and even have a spin-off series of your own, and you turned that down. But I think having that experience acting in those seasons of Happy Days, it seems like it enabled you to have what continues to this day to be a very significant acting career, correct? That was kind of the stepping stone?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just didn't want to be boxed into one character, and it was such a big show, And I thought, my God, this is my first acting role. I don't want to be Leather Tuscadero for the rest of my life. So I'd done 3 seasons. I'd done the part. That was enough. So, and I was right, because I went on to do many, many other types of roles. So I didn't want to be typecast. It was enough I was Suzi Quatro, and Leather Tuscadero, and that's enough. That's a little bit overkill. So I took the decision not to do that. I think I made the right decision.
Right. And how your best-known recording here is your duet of Stumbling In with Chris Norman from the band, the British band Smokey. How did that come about?
So we were in Cologne. I was recording at the EMI studios there, and there was a big award ceremony, too. And we all were there, lots of famous people, and we went to the big VIP party after the award ceremony. And there was a band playing, and I kept grabbing people, trying to get them to go on the stage with me. Nobody would go on. I said, let's jam. Let's have some fun. Nobody would go. Everybody turned me down. Finally, I grabbed Chris. I said, you are coming up with me. And we went up, and we started to sing. And Mike was in the audience, and he looked at the two of us, and he went, ooh, I like that. I like the way it looks. I like the way it sounds. And he went away that night, and he wrote the chorus to Stumbling In, brought it into the studio the next day. And you could hear it was a hit immediately, you know. And my band played on it, including me, of course, on the bass. And we recorded it in Cologne, and we recorded it face to face, like a duet should be. We actually recorded it live, face to face. He wanted to recapture what he had heard that night jamming.
And you know, one thing we discussed early on, how influenced you were by seeing the Beatles and Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show, but now things turn around in the 70s, and I've had a number of my guests recently tell me, like Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's said that when she was a kid, she was visiting family in London, and seeing you on Top of the Pops essentially had the same effect. Oh, she's
such a big fan.
Yeah, and that had the same effect on her as seeing Elvis and the Beatles had on you,
yeah, sure.
and also showing the film.
She's told me that. She's told me that.
Right, and Joan Jett, we see in the movie how she even tried looking exactly like you. How inspired are you by the how inspired are you by the motivation you provided to other women who went on to become performers, in large part because of Suzi Quatro?
I'm very humbled by it. It just, you know, it just makes me go, wow. Because, I mean, even when I was at the She-Rock ceremony, for instance, Cherie was doing a speech and she started to cry. I did an interview with Cherie Curry and Kathy Valentine on Zoom, and Kathy started to cry. I'm going, my God. You know, and then another friend of mine from the Baby Animals, Susie DeMarchi, she came and stayed with me because we worked in Australia together, and she came and stayed a couple nights. And I took her up in my ego room upstairs with everything in it, and she starts to cry. So I think looking at all these women, Joan Jett, the same, you know, I mean, my God, she was probably my biggest fan ever, you know. I think what I did was, without knowing I was doing it, I gave these women who didn't fit in anywhere some place to belong. And this is why they weep. And it's quite humbling.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And for a good number of years, you also hosted a radio show on Radio 2 called Rockin' with Suzi Q. What was a typical show like?
I did various shows. I was on the station for 15 years.
Right. And that was a show where you got to play the American rock and roll largely that you loved, correct? The Rockin' with Suzi Q show?
Yeah, the first one I did was Rockin' with Suzi Q, which was rock and roll up to the Beatles.
Right.
And then I did another one called Wake Up Little Susie, which was, God, that's hard to say, like late 50s all the way through the... That had no rhyme or reason. That was just a good show. Then I started doing lots of documentaries, went all over the world. And then I did my favorite series, which was called Todd-o-phonic, which was a themed series, and I had a different theme each week. And that one I loved because I could be really creative with it. Then I finally left the station because I found out that they weren't playing my records because I was a DJ on their station. And I said, that's not right. I'm an artist. First. I might go back and do some more. Who knows? We'll see.
All right. Now, off stage, you have not lived what you described as the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. Some writers have opined that on stage you are the wild one and off stage the mild one. Do you think that's one of the things that can account for your longevity as a performer?
Probably. I mean, I'm not manufactured, as you know. I am me, but I do believe that you should have a separation. I don't believe you should take your ego off the stage. I don't need to be rocking and rolling, walking along the streets doing my shopping. I have the two separate existence. One is private, one is public. My performance is my performance. I give it my all. I'm very professional. Yeah, I'm still here because I'm real. How else can you say it? I'm real. What I do is real.
Yep. And thanks so much for being part of the show today, Suzi. It's a real honor to have you on. And you mentioned in Suzi Q, the new documentary, that early in your career you were asked how long you would be performing, and you responded until they don't want to see me anymore. And I'm so glad people still want to see you, and I think they will for a long time.
I hope so. Then thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye.